Hello, hello, welcome to the show. Hello, guys. How are you doing?
Doing great. How are you guys?
Doing good. We are with Trevor Palmer and Lynda Cuerno, and I'm Kathy. Peter is not with us today, unfortunately, but that's okay. He'll be back. He'll be back. He's on a pretty great investigation, so I'm sure he'll be telling us all about that. And don't forget to check out our YouTube page because we do have shorts on there, and sometimes he does post little shorts of his investigation. So make sure you take a look at that. How are you guys doing? Tell me about your week.
It's been good. It's been busy. But you know what? Hey, listen, thank goodness that daylight savings time or whatever it is is here because I was able to snuggle in bed a little with my kitty cat this morning. So that was okay.
Me too. I actually, for the first time, and I don't know how long, I slept like 9 hours straight.
Nice.
And I was like, holy crap. And I looked at the clock and I was like, oh my God, I got to get up. And then I realized the time had changed. And I was like, never mind. I don't need to get up. I'm good.
Well, you already know it sent me in a full-blown panic mode earlier because I went downstairs in my house and one of the clocks hadn't been set back and it said 6 p.m. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh my goodness, I thought I was missing the show. So
yeah, I had to go in and change the settings of the show simply because of that, because I did the same thing. I was like, my computer and daylight savings and everything isn't lining up along with StreamYard. So I was like, oh shit. Uh-oh.
Well, it sounds like here in the States, I think we're going to be doing away with that anyway here in the next year or two. So
we only
no more confusion.
Yeah. Hey, we're happy to have you back, Trevor. You've been gone for a few weeks. Where were you?
Oh, I took a mini sabbatical. I go on a hunting trip every year. I go hunting for elk up in Oregon, and I went up there a little bit early to try to spend some time with my dad and just kind of hang out. So I spent 18 days up in the woods, just kind of communing with nature, talking to the trees. I'll tell you, trees are really stuck up. They don't answer back very much. So they really need to branch out with their friends.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I know. It's bad. So, yeah, I came back. I had a full beard going. My wife made me shave it off immediately. So like, no, but it was a lot of fun. It was great. But I missed you guys. I'm really happy to be back on the show.
Yeah, we missed you too. It's good to have you. And I'm really happy to have our guest tonight, Charmaine Handyside. She is from Australian Paranormal. Is it Austrian or Australia Paranormal or Australian Paranormal? I'm not sure. We'll ask her, but we're going to bring her on. Paranormal. So she's all the way here from Australia, which is awesome for us. So I'm going to bring her on. Hi, Charmaine. How are you?
Hello. Hey, everyone.
We love your accent. Is it Australian Paranormal or
Australian Paranormal?
Okay,
Australian Paranormal.
Find us on Facebook.
Perfect. Yeah, because you were telling us like you have like 80,000 followers on there.
That's we've got a really, really big group. So lots of people interested in the paranormal over here in Australia.
That's great.
I bet. Hey, well, you guys must have some interesting places to investigate too. Like, you know, Australia is not that young, you know, so
yeah, sometimes it feels really young compared to sort of Europe and also you guys over in America and Canada and so forth who have some great sites, but we do have some good sites because Australia was obviously colonized by the English and they brought over all of the convicts, and there's heaps of amazing sites here in Australia that we're able to investigate thanks to all of that sort of colonial building and all of the history that's gone on. So we're starting to get a lot more places in Australia really engaging with us as paranormal investigators as well, so that we can go and explore heaps more than we used to even sort of 5 years ago, where it was quite difficult to get in. There's a lot more happening now, which is really exciting.
That is good. How long have you been doing this?
I've been doing this for about 20 odd years. I started Australian Paranormal about 10 years ago. But I've been very, very interested since being a child, but now I'm sort of in my 40s and I kind of go, it's been actually 20 years of what I would term proper investigating, in terms of, you know, getting together a bit of a kit and going out with people with common interest and looking at sites and seeing what evidence we can capture and collate and so forth. So it's a bit of a lifelong interest, I think, that'll stick with me for a while.
No kidding. Pete says hi. He is watching. He's just
Hey, Pete.
unfortunately not able to join the show because he's not near the computer and stuff like that, but
Yeah,
he
yeah.
is watching. So hello, Pete. Good to have you. Yeah. So okay. How did you get into it? Like, did you start on your own, or did you actually get like friends to join or teammates, or just how did you do that?
Yeah, actually, I have my mother to blame for it. I guess blame my mum. No, my mum has been very interested in paranormal investigation for as long as I can remember. So I think our family are probably a little bit sensitive in a number of ways, and we've always, I guess, understood when we've sort of felt like perhaps there was something around, and then set up equipment to try and validate, I guess, whether what we sort of feel is appropriate or correct. So that's been interesting. But my mum, probably where it actually all started is my mum owned a business, a building management business back in Western Australia when we were living there, and I was about 8. She had this government building that she had the cleaning contract for, and we went to this building, and she was constantly losing cleaners. They'd always ring up and they'd be like, "We're out, sorry, not staying. Something's wrong. She'd be like, "Oh, for goodness sake, just go in and do it." And then she ran short of cleaners, so we had to go with her into this building one day. And this building used to be a girls' orphanage in Western Australia, and you know, obviously lots of children perished with disease and all sorts of things that were, you know, going on in these sorts of institutions. And we went to this building, and my sister and I, I was 8 and she was 9, and we were standing beside a tap, and we actually watched this tap turn and the water start to fall out of the faucet. And neither of us were scared. We were just like, "That's really strange. What's going on?" And then Mum comes out. She goes, "For goodness sake, turn off the tap. Like, get back to her, blah, blah, blah." And we're like, "No, Mum, the tap turns itself on." And she goes, "No, don't be silly." And she comes and she turns the tap off. And it sort of started this big interest for me, because I was like, what on earth created this, you know, move of the tap? It wasn't just a faucet running. It was genuinely, it moved.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. And then talking to Mum later that night, she goes, she has this building. She has things go on all the time. Cleaners see shadows, people hear knocks, stuff falls over, all sorts of things. And that kind of started it, where I'm like, "Oh, I want to know more. How do we capture things?" And of course, the equipment's so available now. It wasn't back then. But
Right.
yeah, so as a teenager, I started to grab equipment once it became a bit more accessible.
That's so cool. That's so cool.
I just love the fact that even at 8 years old, you had that wherewithal to not be like, run, there's a ghost, you know, but there was that natural, you know, inquisitive portion, you know, of like, what's going on here, which I mean is so essential to, you know, a good investigator.
Yeah.
You know, because I mean, all the time, even on the TV shows that we watch, you know, guys freaking out over, you know, every little thing, you know, and it's, everything's a demon, everything's a ghost, you know, it's,
Yeah.
you know, and it's really not like that. So, I mean, I think that's fantastic that you were able to do that at a young age.
Oh, yeah, thanks. No, it's I agree. I think one of the key things, particularly if you want to try and get activity and potentially and sort of attempt to communicate and sort of see more activity, you can't freak out. It's just sort of being calm, being relaxed, engaging like you would if you were engaging with a person, in my view.
Absolutely.
Although you do see a lot of people try and provoke, you know, they go, "Oh, you know, I'm going to bang a door and leave if you don't do something," type of thing. But I personally don't think it works that well. I think being calm and cool and just sort of letting activity kind of roll is really important. Otherwise, what you get's just never going to be great.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's usually the moment that you're not expecting it is when it happens anyway, right? So, you know, the more you're provoking it, it's kind of like, I mean, personally, we've never really had too much happen when we're provoking it. It's kind of like when you're sitting there and you're chill, that all of a sudden it's like the ball rolls across the room or something happens and you're like, whoa, okay.
Totally agree.
Yeah. So is your husband involved in it too? So is he part of the team as well?
He comes along very, very rarely. He's not as personally. I think he's a little bit scared. He's shaking his head right now, going, "He's not." I think he probably is a little bit scared. No, he's actually had some good experiences as well. So he often sort of shares some of his, but he's not as keen in sort of sitting in a dark place on your own at night as I and the team are. But he does help out with some things, which is good. I think nice to have a partner who is engaged and sort of understands the interest.
I think there's something that's missed there in a lot of these on a lot of our teams and stuff is that background family dynamic. And I know in my family, my wife, she really doesn't want to have anything to do with the paranormal, but she's extremely supportive of what I do because she knows it's important to me because of the experiences that I've had and the people that we've been able to help and stuff. And I think that's great that you've been able to get him out on a couple of investigations. I'm working on getting my wife out on some myself, so I'm hoping she'll join me here pretty quick.
That would be kind of cool, hey?
So you're in Melbourne. Is that primarily where you do your investigations, or do you travel? How do you travel all over? Or
yeah. But pre-COVID, everyone sort of talks about the pre-COVID years where we were traveling.
Those were the days.
Yeah, we were traveling everywhere. We are just about to start getting going again with some of our more interstate investigations. So through the last 2 years of COVID, everything's been very much local. But previously we were doing some investigations in Tasmania. We've been up to into Adelaide, which is South Australia, for those of you who are familiar with that area. In Australia, we've got lots of old mining towns and convict towns and so forth. So lots of great places to explore. And then I guess through the COVID years, more recently, we've been doing what we term more sort of household investigations. So people who are getting in touch and sort of reporting that something a little unusual is happening or they're feeling a little unsettled. And I know we've been taking our equipment in and seeing what we can capture and then, link them to the right sort of support to help them with any issues that they've got. So that's been more of our recent. And then, but we're definitely looking forward to getting back into it. We also did some international investigations in Scotland, which was great, in England. So we're looking forward to getting those up. Amazing. The history over there compared to Australia, we've got great history, but we just don't have, thousands of years of history like over there. So it's very, very cool. But
living in the United States, you want to talk about lack of history? I mean, we just haven't been around that long. In comparison, right? So
yeah.
We're in Canada. Like we're probably the youngest of all of you. Remember that?
Yeah.
Canada's only 150 years. I mean, we get a lot of Aboriginal, Indigenous activity, but it's not within the buildings. It seems to be more land related than it is anything else.
Yeah. Interesting you say that, Cathryn. We've got a lot of we're really lucky on the Australian Paranormal group. A lot of the footage that gets posted to the group is often from our First Nation, our Aboriginal community, and they're very in touch with a lot of the energy that sort of moves around them. And some of the pictures they'll post of, people who have passed away and so forth. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing what they're sort of able to capture. And I think that accounts for a lot of the paranormal footage we get as well.
I bet. One of the things I actually find interesting about talking to international teams is that even though we have things Canada and the US well known for, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, that type of thing, right? And is it the same as in Australia? Like some of your myths, I guess. I don't want to call Bigfoot a myth because, that's obviously we don't know. But when we look at the cryptozoology side of it, I guess, is it similar to us like in Australia, or do you have your own, I guess, legends or myths?
Yeah, we do have some similar things. So for example, we have like a yowie, which is kind of similar to your Bigfoot type of area. So we've got a few things like that as well. Some of it which has come out of our sort of Aboriginal culture that's there. And then, and then we do have, sort of grainy videos where people sort of will claim to see they're out in the bush and they see something unusual. They see like their version of a Bigfoot or something along those lines. But we haven't really had any compelling vision of those types of things. But certainly a lot of people will sort of claim to see them. So I think everywhere around the world there is some sort of I guess those types of myths that tie into culture and so forth. We definitely have the same.
That's pretty cool. How big is your team?
We've got a team of 7, and then we also have, so that's our permanent team, and then we also have some other people who will come in and out depending on the size of a site. We have done some really big buildings. We did a castle in Scotland, and we had to, basically get some volunteers who came and helped us because we just had so much to cover in a very short amount of time. So we've scaled up pretty dramatically at times through a wonderful cohort of volunteers through the Australian Paranormal group. But yeah, 7 is our permanent group. So they sometimes rotate in and out depending on what we're doing and what the site is. But it's a really good team. We're really lucky.
A castle in Scotland. Like you're living our dreams right now. Like we're living vicariously through you at this moment.
100%.
Yeah, 100%.
Have you done any of the battlefields from Scotland?
We tried to do a little bit at Culloden. We actually
I'd love to go there.
Yeah, we didn't really get any evidence there, which could be a result of a few things. Could be environmental factors of the day. It could just be it's such a big tourist site. We just don't know. But we weren't successful at really getting anything there. Interestingly, though, at the castle in Scotland, it was at one point an old people's home. So it had been converted, and there was obviously a number of residents who passed away in the building. And we actually think that was really most of the activity that we managed to sort of gain evidence of. We sort of attributed more there, as opposed to sort of, the history of, you hear the stories of these amazing people in history who've come through the building and the battles that have happened around it and all these sorts of things. We didn't really know if we were able to pick up anything around those lines, but it's nonetheless, there is something really amazing about the environment it creates standing in a castle with its beautiful stone and the mustiness and all of those things.
It's just the presence of being there, that would be so amazing. There's a question for you. I don't know what your name is because it just comes up Facebook user on our chat, unfortunately. So if you're able to let us know who you are, that would be great. But the question is, North America has a lot of places that are alleged to be haunted, but are usually overrated. What does Australia have for hot spots?
Yeah. We've got a number of what I would term really good sites to visit. One that I actually really like in Victoria, for those of you who are Victorian based in Melbourne, I really like J Ward, which is it's part of what was a mental asylum. J Ward was where the criminally insane were placed, so it's a separate wing. And J Ward, so J as in Juliet, J and Ward. Some of the best footage I've had in my paranormal career has come out of J Ward. There is just some really huge energy and history associated with that particular building. So I think it's a terrific one to look at. For those of you who are familiar with Tasmania, obviously we have a very well-known site called Port Arthur, which is where a lot of the convicts were held when they first came to Australia. And the conditions they were in were just deplorable, and a lot of people passed away in really, unfortunate circumstances. And there's just so much energy, and, people will go and take photos and they'll just be, fooling around on their cameras and they'll see that they've managed to capture, some really interesting sort of evidence of energy and so forth. So they're definitely sites I would thoroughly recommend. But there's heaps of sites. There's also, similar to anywhere, you get your sites that are just well over, they're a bit exhausted. Everyone goes through, everyone's, sitting there with their cameras snapping away, and you just walk through and you're like, oh, this is a bit of and we've got plenty of those as well.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I can imagine. Tell us. Okay. So we're going to ask the typical question here. Tell us your scariest encounter, or I guess I don't even know if it's scary, but the one that makes you just kind of go, holy crap. Like, I can't believe this happened.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Well, there's probably two, I would say. One is living in a house in Western Australia.
Tinka's actually in Australia, so that's why she's saying afternoon. So that's pretty cool. She's from Australia, so yeah.
Awesome.
I think
I think probably I remember once we were living in a house when I was a teenager, and my brother and my mum were having a bit of a blue, and they were yelling and carrying on at each other. And this house, we'd had a number of incidents in this house, so there was a bit of almost what I'd term poltergeist sort of energy there. And a clock was on a wall, literally got banged right off the wall and just flew straight across the kitchen and smashed up. And my mother and brother stood there just in absolute silence. So I guess the ghost got its way, certainly stopped the fight. But we had a number of things that were happening in that home which kind of really piqued my interest. And it was part of where I really started to crank into getting equipment to try and understand what was going on in that particular house. But that was probably that was a key experience there. And probably one other is I was with my team and we went to this beautiful little town in South Australia to investigate. And we were in what was I've gone brain dead, where the nuns stay.
Convent.
Thank you. We went into this convent and we were there, and it was 2:00 in the morning and nothing had happened. We were all sitting there and we're tired and we're like, oh, nothing's going to happen. It's a fail. And my periscope was on the floor and it started ticking around, and the color was tick, 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 around, round, round, and it stopped at me. And everyone's just sort of standing there looking at each other, and I'm like, okay, hello, who are you, rah, 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 and I'm asking some questions, and I've got my little EVP going and nothing's happening. I'm like, oh, it's just some errant something has caused it. And went home utterly exhausted, slept, got in the car the next day to drive home, and was driving over a big bridge, and my mum was in the car with me, and all of a sudden the car filled up with the smell of mothballs. And we're like, what on earth is that smell? We put the windows down, we've got our heads out the window, and the air's fresh outside. It's in the car. And I'm like, good God, what is that smell? And it lasted until we got to the other side of the bridge and it was gone. And then we managed to play back the footage, and our theory is we kind of might have collected something up in that convent, and then as we've gone over the bridge, it's almost done a bit of a natural cleanse and it's been sort of pulled away. But the smell of mothballs to this day is something I have never understood. We never had any mothballs in the car, we've never had any mothballs in our house, but how it was so strong and pungent is just beyond me. The power that being must have had.
That's
I'm guessing you didn't smell mothballs at the convent either.
No, it was interesting. The convent was sort of musty, but not mothballs. But yeah, it was just a very precise odor. We knew exactly what it was, and
yeah. It's a really, you smell a mothball. It's like, yep, that's a mothball.
A mothball.
Peter says, I investigated Port Arthur and Taz and Fremantle Prison in Western Australia. The energy in these places is very intense.
Indeed, yeah. Fremantle Prison is another great site. Like a lot of the old prisons, there's people who've been hanged there as part of their penalties, and a lot of people who've died through disease and violence and so forth. And Fremantle has a heap. Another really historic town in Australia, again, where the convicts were very much used to build the town up back in the 1800s. Amazing energy, and Port Arthur is just unreal. Definitely worth the visit.
I bet that would be really cool. Now, I have a question for you. What kinds of equipment are your favorite kinds of equipment to use? Yeah,
it's funny. I've kind of gone through some phases of being what I would term really traditional and low equipment into going into really like highly equipmentized and scientific. And I've brought that back a little bit now, I will say. I think back when I was probably very, very excited by equipment, I almost just felt like there was just too much going on, and it almost sort of anything that might have been tempted to communicate and engage sort of probably would have run the other direction. So kind of wheeled it back a bit. But I think my favorite bit of kit that I still like to hang on to is I have an Ovilus, and I actually really love it. And I find the Ovilus takes a little bit of time to make it work for you in terms of really understanding the words that come back and explaining to your spirit how to engage in it with it in a meaningful way to help communicate. But now that I've sort of got the hang of it in a really good way, I actually find it a hugely useful tool. I still find, I still find what I would term the basic tools of the trade, though, are the ones you need, like a voice recorder. I don't go anywhere without it. And I still, funnily, people still talk to me and go, I don't believe that, voice recorders are useful. I think probably 90% of the evidence we collect up would be voice recordings.
Oh, yeah, easily.
Yeah. So people who go, no, I don't want to do it. I'm like, oh, God, really? Because it's kind of where everything is. Hearing crying and background noises that you just wouldn't hear, whispering, those types of things. The voice recorder is kind of the key thing. And if I could only go in with one thing, it would still be a voice recorder. It would literally be the key thing I would go into. But, K2 machines, we use those. We do use a lot of video recording now. Now that also the audio on those video recorders is so good, we find them really useful. So obviously we hook up an area with, a set of cameras, and we have taken to having someone monitor them now as well, so that we can, if we are seeing an area that looks particularly active, we can kind of redirect the group to some extent around those areas. So they're definitely things that we do now that we didn't used to do. And that's been really helpful because our time is so constrained when we go and investigate.
Right.
It really helps us just hone in. Yep. So I think that they're the key things. But for anyone out there who's wanting to get some gear, really get a voice recorder, get a K2, and really you're 90% of the way there. Everything else is kind of just extra cream on top, and it's fun and it's a bonus. But if you can't afford it, like, get those things and you're there.
They
really
have.
like what you said.
Sorry. Go ahead, Trevor. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say that I really liked what you said about, that equipment overload factor where, you get so much gear, so much tech out there, and if we're looking at or dealing with spirits from the 1800s or the 1700s, how intimidating would that be to see that kind of gear? I mean, they must be thinking witchcraft, and running the other way when they see all these lights and the whistles and the bells and everything like that.
Yeah.
And just like you, I find that the very basics, the voice recorders, the video recorders, EMF detectors, that is really all you need to do an effective investigation. And a sensible investigator. And I think that's fantastic. That's right up my alley. I couldn't agree more.
One of the most successful tools we've actually used is a temperature gun. And having a solid or a stable spot that you're directed to, and just asking who's ever there if they can raise the temperature up or down by certain degrees. We've had amazing results with just that. Like, especially if you can get them to go, hey, go up to, 30 degrees, 32, 36, and then bring it all the way down. Like right there, like that's almost impossible for a natural occurrence to happen, and it.
Yeah. It is amazing. We used to have, we still actually have the thermal cameras and Boo Bears, laser grids, EM pumps. We had the whole works going. We just found we just scaled it back. But I actually agree with you around the temperature gauges. We have a lot of those. I also think they're really useful. A lot of people will talk to me when we go into places and I go, there's a cold spot.
Yeah.
And I love to use a temperature gun because a lot of the time what we find is there actually isn't a cold spot. It's people's perception of it. So having that ability to sort of validate it, and then people go, oh, okay, well, maybe it's not, and they kind of move on. But if you have got a cold spot, then it is obviously, those types of things can be great indicators. So yeah, 100% agree, Cathryn. I think temperature gauges are good. And they're, again, they're a really cheap thing. You can jump online and buy one of those really cheaply for your kid.
Yeah, like we use it for you know, the temperature gun I have, it's good for the walls and it's good for your head. So it works out well.
Well, there's so many people that bought temperature guns for COVID. So, I mean,
Yeah.
it's practically a household item these days.
Yeah,
Indeed.
absolutely. So, yeah. Tinka had said Maitland. I'm not sure what
in
it
New
is.
South Wales. Yeah,
Yeah,
the
it's
Maitland
definitely
Jail.
haunted. Have you been there?
Yeah, excellent site. Yeah, there's some the Maitland Jail is excellent. There's also the old Q Centre up that way, which used to be where they quarantined people. Lots of active sites up there. So yeah, terrific site.
Oh,
Okay.
that's crazy. So, if you were to talk about, I don't know, some of the pioneers in the field that you're really enamored with, who would you say was sort of an influence or somebody that you thought was pretty cool?
I think probably one of the shows. I'll come back to the pretty cool part in a second, because I think one of the things was more in the early days of seeing a lot of the shows that would come on. It was kind of almost a reminder of how not to investigate the paranormal. So show there's actually most haunted. They'd go to some really wonderful sites, like terrific sites, and they'd spend the entire time screaming.
Yes, drive me insane.
You'd be like, oh, just stop it, really. So there was a lot of that. And then, of course, you had Zach who'd go in, like, you will give me respect, and blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, oh, God, please don't do that. So there was a lot
every investigator out there that's legitimate, right? Like,
yeah. God. And then people would join the group and they go, oh, I love Zach. And I'd be like, oh, don't be like Zach.
You're out.
Yeah. See ya. There's the door.
Oh, but I used to like some of the back sort of in my 20s, seeing like some of the TAPS groups, for example, who used to be on the two guys, the two plumbers, actually. I'm trying to remember their names.
Jason and Grant.
Yeah, they were really good, really cool, just very calm. They go in, they were really professional, and they never lose it, no matter what happened. They'd just be like, okay, cool. And away they go. And I used to kind of try to really model the way that I was investigating at that point in time on that, because I think that they were actually, as a show, they offered the calmest kind of view of how it should happen. And then, then there were others who came along after them who I think kind of mirrored that. But I think from a, what I would term the commercialization of paranormal investigating, I think they were a great example of kind of how it should be, rather than the most haunted view of what it was. Yeah, so there's been a few, but there is a lot now. There's a lot of great people in the field, and obviously, Pete, who's out investigating at the moment, who's been doing some amazing work, and the books that he's been writing are obviously a really exciting addition. And I think it's kind of nice that this whole interest of paranormal is sort of taken a lot more seriously now. There's a scientific lens to it. You used to be the kook, basically, if you were going off and doing this. Now people are like, oh yeah, I'm really interested. Tell me more. Something's happened to me. Rah, rah, rah. There's a lot more acceptance of it, which I think is great, and I hope that continues. But every so often, even on my group in Australian Paranormal, you'll see some things and you'll sort of roll your eyes a bit, and you're like, oh, this is the kind of thing that hurts us as an interest, with some of what people do. And or they'll post a video and a rock will fly across it, and it's like, well, it's
not an orb, it's dust.
Over and over. And now we have mobile phones, and lens flare on mobile phones is prolific.
Yeah.
And I would say 9 out of 10 photos posted at the moment were like, did you use a mobile phone? Yes, I did. It's a green orb. Sorry, mate, but that's lens flare.
Yeah.
Over and over and over it goes.
Yeah, it's almost like having you almost need preset sentences just written out so that you can respond, and trying to explain to people, and you're as much as you're trying to explain, you've always got that newbie, or that new investigator who's like, oh yeah, that's this, and it's some demon, and it's your grandma, and it's and they're like, and you're like, it's dust. It is literally dust. Like,
it's just
okay,
dust.
you guys have a conversation, but I'm out. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and then they'll come back being like, what do you think? Well, I just told you what I think. It's freaking dust. Like, we told you 20 hours ago. It
Yeah.
hasn't changed. It's still dust. You can spin it however you want to spin it. It's dust. Sorry.
When you get the people that have the apps that, I mean, not just Photoshop, but all these other things that people can, they're just hoaxing photos and altering their stuff. And then they're throwing it out there. It's like, oh yeah, this really happened. And how upset they get when we call them out on it.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, this is real. No, it's really not. And this is why. And it's tough, and it sounds like, I mean, we have the exact same problems here. We get pictures, people send us all the time, hey, what do you think about this? It's dust. It's a bug. No, it's my grandma. Okay.
Yeah,
it's dust. But they want to defend it so passionately. It gets really hard to try not to offend people that think that they have something paranormal. But
it's also, I think, a lot of people are just sort of trying to understand and learn that when you use filters like Snapchat is a great example. The amount of pictures that'll get posted, somebody takes a selfie with a Snapchat filter on and there'll be another face. And we sort of talk about, how Snapchat works and why it's sort of in the way that it's matrixed, it's picked up a face. But again, they'll swear black and blue that that's what it is. So we see a lot of that. And I guess it's kind of the nice part of the technology is everybody's getting to engage in the paranormal investigation. And then the sort of the negative side is, unfortunately, it leads to a lot of what I term pollution of the really good evidence because of the fact there's so much of this, artificially created stuff, even though people, it's not malicious, but it's not real. So that type of stuff is probably the challenge for the paranormal groups now around how we weed that out. But it's a great learning experience for a lot of people. And hence we allow the posts to come through the group because we really want people to learn, a green orb. If you're taking a picture on a mobile phone into a light source, chances are you'll get one. And it's not paranormal, and this is what it is. So we're sort of trying to use that as the learning. But I think it's now the next big challenge for this as a field. We've fought to be taken seriously. We're now sort of getting that, but now we've got this kind of, challenge now of all of this extra, what I call erroneous crap that is now in the way. So we've got
100%. Do you guys use like psychics or mediums or anything along that line as well? Or is it just all equipment?
Yeah, it's interesting. You asked. My mother loves to use a psychic. I hate it.
Okay.
So we come from a very different end of the spectrum, but that can sometimes lead to some interesting results when we investigate. My mum's she finds psychics interesting. She feels that it really helps hone, on how we might engage to sort of see if we can collect evidence. I'm less fond of them. I'm a believer in psychics, and I'm a believer that people have this ability, but I'm not a believer of it in terms of collecting evidence. I feel like sometimes it can kind of promote, people like they'll feel something that I'm not sure if they really feel it or if they're influenced. So for me, I like to not have it. But I'm open to the idea that some people enjoy kind of engaging with psychics as part of an investigation. But for me, no, not so much.
That was actually one of the reasons why I didn't mean to interrupt you before, but that was one of because I do find that a lot of, times when you're, people that are bringing psychics, not all the time, I guess it really depends on how well the psychic, or, that they have the actual abilities or whatever. But we found that a lot, is that the psychic either becomes the main, especially if your clients are in the house with you, the psychic, no matter what happens, you could have a couch fly across the room and it's going to be the psychic that they're paying attention to. You can't, as a seasoned investigator, if you're trying to explain to a client, like, this is, A, B, C, or D, and this is what we're suggesting to you, they're going to look at the psychic rather than pay attention to somebody they're going to look at the psychic who might have only been doing that for 5 minutes, as opposed to the seasoned investigator that's been doing this for years and years and years and knows this activity. And, that's why I was asking, because sometimes it can be more of a hindrance to have it on the team than it is, productive.
Right? I agree.
I think anytime you have a medium on your team, that they should be how do you put this gently? But they should be used kind of like one of your pieces of equipment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they're there to aid. And I don't even think that the clients even need to know that there's a psychic on the team. But when we were with our other team, we had a lady that was a medium, and the real deal, one of the few that I've met, and she would be kind of used like a compass, kind of direct, hey, I think we should pay attention to this, pay attention to that, or this is what I'm getting at. And then we can take our other instruments and try to validate those feelings and turn them into something tangible that we can give over to the clients. So but finding good mediums is hard. So
really hard.
So the ones that are there are a lot of people out there that make that claim, but there are I've only met a few that are blessed with that degree of gift. So if there's any people out there that are considering using a medium or using psychic, make sure you vet them properly, and so you don't get taken for a ride.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's a lot of them that will, I remember, before, even though we had, mediums with our team, we'd sometimes want outsiders, just because when I was like case manager, I know all the cases. So it's not being productive if I'm giving any information, like I might as well just read it out loud. I mean, that's not using any skills. That's just knowing how to read. Right. But so you'd want to bring in and sometimes trying to interview psychics or mediums was just like, by the end of the day, you're just like crossed eyes, like, It was hard. Sometimes you'd find a really good one, and when you do find that really good one, you're kind of like, you kind of covet them, you're like, oh, okay.
You might need to have them do Pete's psychic test, Cathryn.
What's that?
You'll have to get them to do Peter's psychic test of writing an animal on a card and seeing if they can get back to you.
Exactly.
Charmaine, I have a question for you. So you mentioned your mom a couple of times. Is she on your team?
Yeah, she is. Yeah,
she's one of the 7?
Yes, yeah. My mum and I co-founded Australian Paranormal. Her name's Patricia.
That's great.
So she's obviously a really big part of my interest, and it's really lovely that we kind of get to obviously spend time together as part of our interest as well, which is really cool.
That's fantastic. And the other 6, are they family members or just friends?
No, they're a couple of them are friends that have been with us the whole way, and then others are members of the group who we've met along the way and have come along to different events, and have expressed an interest and learnt our ropes and so forth, and they're now part of the team through those channels. So that's been really good. We often do some more public investigations where we'll take a small group, and they've been really great networking events for us to sort of meet people with the common interest and sort of share everyone's learnings and build our team out. So they've been a really, really fantastic tool.
So with the 7 members, I know you have like a Facebook following of like 80,000, which is phenomenal. I think our team's Facebook group, I think we broke 1,000 a little while ago, and we were super excited about that. Are you keeping it at 7 for a reason, or is there? I mean, it seems like it would be you should have a bigger team. I know you have volunteers. I'm just curious if you're just keeping it at 7 for a reason, or.
We've sort of kept it at 7 primarily because of the COVID restrictions in Australia. We haven't really been able to travel. That's just opened up in the last sort of 4 or 5 months, where travel has kind of broadened. So that was part of our rationale. But now we're starting to get back out there. Yeah, it's possible we will sort of look to expand up. And we do some drives every so often through our groups, where we look for people who are interested if we're going to a certain location. So we sort of try and give people an opportunity that way. But yeah, I suspect our group will expand again now that we're back on the move after our 2.5 years of being very localized.
Oh boy.
Were you guys able to do any investigating at all when COVID was at its, I guess, I suppose not during lockdown, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, it was very limited in Victoria and Australia. We had probably one of the most severe lockdowns in the world, actually.
We watched that from Canada, and we were like, oh man.
Yeah, Well, we tended to do we telecasted a lot of investigations, but they were private sort of investigations. So they tended to be more where somebody would flag that they were having a problem in their home, and they'd give us permission to sort of broadcast it out. We were able to do some small ones, but yeah, I mean, the disappointing part of sort of the COVID lockdowns, all for the right reasons, but you know, we sort of had over a year where we had one point, we had a year where we didn't have any investigation at all, and so that was really disheartening for us. And then it was interesting because as the lockdown started to stop, a lot of people were just itching to get out there, and we had heaps of people going, "Oh, take us somewhere, like let's go." So, you know, we've just started that back up, but definitely in the new year, we've got the first quarter has a full slate, so we're really excited. That'll be kind of our first quarter where in 2.5 years where we're like, yes, we're ready. We've got heaps booked in, lots of places that we're going to go and see. So we're really excited at what we're going to be sharing back to the broader group. But yeah, I'm itching too because and I've just had COVID last week, so I feel like I've done my dash now. I'm ready to go out.
Hey, welcome to the club.
Yeah, Lynda actually had it, what was it, about a month and a half ago?
Yeah,
and I had it like 3 weeks ago. We're just like at that recovery nonsense.
Yeah, it's shocking, isn't it?
I was just wondering, I wonder how many people discovered that they lived in a haunted house when they were locked down in it.
Right? I was thinking that too. Like,
I mean, like they never spent any time there because they were always going out and they were working, and then they got stuck there and they're like, holy crap, what is going on? You know,
it's true. It's true.
It is. I actually think one of the things we noticed is we got a lot of messages through during the lockdown period. And I think also a lot of it was because people were feeling really highly emotional, like they were almost sort of perhaps tapping into their emotions in a way that they weren't normally, and their stress levels were really high and these types of things. So we had heaps of people engaging, and part of the reason why our group exploded, I think, was really the lockdowns because people were at home. So Trevor, I think your question is actually really valid because I suspect there were a whole lot of people who, you know, maybe discovered things in their house or maybe just their own reactions to it, and just general interest just kind of went ballistic. So, you know, I guess it's the silver lining of a really horrible COVID situation for us, and that our community just absolutely grew.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I wonder, what is on your paranormal bucket list? Where would you like to go?
Oh gosh, one place I've really wanted to go, but I don't really like my chances of ever being able to do it, is the Tower in London. And I remember visiting there as in my 20s and going into the area where the common area where people were kept prisoner, and they were doing all their carvings on the wall. For those of you who've been to the Tower, you'll know the room, but it escapes me right now. And I walked in, and just the energy I felt walking in there literally floored me. I was just like, oh my God, this is just woof. And ever since, I've really wanted to go back. I'm like, I would love to just take some equipment and spend some time there just to see what evidence would I be able to capture in that place where it just feels like it radiates out of the wall. Like there's just so much energy and emotion in that space. So I would absolutely love to go there. Like I said, don't really rate my chances. I don't know the Royals, unfortunately. But if anyone does, try and get me in.
Peter, don't you know them? Peter knows them.
Peter,
where's he at?
You can do it. I don't know. I just think Australia, to me, is such a scary place anyway. I mean, you've got some incredibly scary, monstrous, I don't know, your spiders are like dinner plates, and it just scares the heck out of me anyway. So I can imagine that it's a scary place to begin with. So I can't even imagine.
It's the kangaroos that get you.
Oh my God.
Yeah, there is a lot of things to get you in Australia. We're coming into summer here, so we've got our snake season about to begin, which we've actually already seen some sort of around our area recently. So it's all happening, Lynda. You come over, I'll show you all the safe spots to go.
Are most of your snakes poisonous? Or are they venomous, I should say? Or are they?
Yeah, a good portion of them are. We do have, pythons and tree snakes, which are not interested, but yeah, there are quite a lot of them. You definitely would assume they're venomous in Australia.
Right.
God.
Yeah,
Right.
you wouldn't touch them.
Because one of the things that you also do, Trevor had noticed earlier, is entomology. Is that right?
Yeah,
So what
yeah,
do you
that's
do
right.
with that? Like, is it just your own personal like hobby, or tell
Yeah,
us a little bit about that?
it started out as a bit of a hobby, but my husband is a viticulturalist, so he grows the vines for wineries, and we've just bought some land to plant our own winery, and part of the entomology is trying to introduce this idea that rather than spraying chemicals onto a vineyard or onto any garden, frankly, the idea is to try and strike a balance. So you bring in sort of friendly insects that help to keep the bad ones out, or at least get it balanced. So you don't need to spray so many chemicals onto your vegetables or your vines and so forth. So that's how my entomology interest started. But also, obviously, as pointed out, Lynda, in Australia, we've got no shortage of them. So it's good to know what you're dealing with, because we have thousands of species of ants, as an example, and about 3/4 of them can do something pretty bad to you. So it's good to know exactly what you're dealing with. So entomology is actually a really handy interest, but from the vineyard perspective, it's trying to help us grow the best grapes for the best wine we can do. So that's how we use it now.
What is it? What is going to be your, if you don't mind, I don't know if you're able to share this yet or not. What is your wine label going to be?
It's called Still Moon.
Still Moon.
Still
Still
noon.
moon, as in the moon in
Oh,
the
still
sky.
moon. Still
Full
moon.
moon.
That's a
Yeah.
cool name.
Hey.
Is it going to be just available in Australia only, or is it going to be international?
I think
No,
Kathy's getting thirsty.
I actually don't drink at all, which is funny, but I do have a lot of friends that drink, so
Yeah.
I'm always looking for, because I don't know anything about wine or anything like that, and I don't drink just simply because I kind of like my own head, I guess is the best way to say it. I don't
I'm
know
with
how.
you, Kathy. I'm the same way.
Yeah, I used to be a bartender, so I've seen enough of the behavior of not being in your head, where I kind of just like my own energy. So,
Yeah, that's
but
fair.
I know people that do, and you're always like, oh, what do I don't even know what to bring, and then you kind of think, oh, I guess I should bring wine. But I mean, for me, a $2 bottle of wine is not going to be any different than a $200, because I wouldn't notice the difference in taste anyway. So, I mean, but is it going to be international, or is it?
Yeah, we hope to. This year, so our vintage from 2021 and 2022, we're releasing. So just in Australia for now, but hopefully next year, our production ramps up pretty drastically. So you never know. I'll keep you posted.
Yeah, please do, because that's pretty exciting, actually. Good for you.
Yeah, thank you.
So, Charmaine, this is a question I get asked quite a bit, and I always have a very difficult time answering it. So I'm going to ask you, because I'm sure you've been asked this before. But I mean, do you have a favorite haunt, a favorite place that you investigate, some place that you would love to do over and over again?
Yeah, I mentioned J Ward earlier, and that's certainly one of them. Yes, there is actually. For those of you who are from Victoria and you know the town Denali, if you don't, have a look at it. It's a little gold rush town, and there was this cafe that's there, and this place had probably the most amazing poltergeist level activity I've ever been able to record, and it's something I'll share so that everyone can have a bit of a look at it. But and it's actually a video of my mum sitting, and she's talking to this entity or spirit, and she asks it to move the flowers and do a couple other things, and it does all of these things. And it's a place that we've then gone back over and over again to sort of validate, to go, can we replicate it? What is this? What is it? And it's something where pretty much, I mean, nothing's 100%, but I reckon our strike rate there is just incredible. We go in, and if we're respectful and really considerate, it just seems to really enjoy people being around and having a bit of a chat. And so I think that's probably one of them. And what I'd say is if you're someone just starting to investigate, you go to all of these big commercial places and you'll go and you'll have fun and it's good to see it. But go to these little towns. Like, there is so much history, and they're places that I often think when they're not too tapped out, like, you can get really interesting results and engagement. And so for me, Denali was one of them. That cafe in particular it's just an extraordinary building. And it's on our page, actually, the video. I'll try and find it and put it back up to the top of the page for anyone who's interested, because it was literally just incredible evidence of what happens if you just engage and you're patient and all of these types of things. And
respectful too, obviously respectful.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you put your evidence on your Facebook page?
We put some of it up there. Some of it when we go and visit places, we ask for permission around whether we can post it. Right. Some places aren't that hot for it. So we don't post it if they're not keen. That usually comes because they don't want their business to be associated with it, those types of things. So, often we don't on those basis, or we do it and we basically make the location anonymous is the other way we manage it. But most of it we try to put up there.
Good. And the Facebook page is Australian Paranormal?
It is, yeah, Australian Paranormal. So it's definitely come follow if you guys are interested. Next year in particular, as we start our investigations back up in force, we'll definitely be posting a heap up there. So we're really excited.
Fantastic.
That's pretty cool. How do you guys mostly do residential, or is it mostly commercial, or?
It's almost a half and half, I would say. Okay. We have a number of sites now that our group has sort of become bigger and we've managed to build up a reputation of being really respectful for the buildings that we visit. We now get invited into places, which has been really lovely. When we first started out, it was really difficult getting access into locations outside of tours and things, which are probably not really the buildings we were keen on anyhow. So we're now sort of getting that. But I would say at least half of them are homes. It's where people are living with it and they sort of experience it and they reach out if something's not feeling right. I guess the downside of it is that it's normally because somebody's feeling uncomfortable, and that is why we get engaged. Which is, I say downside because it's really nice to go into a place where people are like kind of happy to coexist. But we understand that that's not the experience for everyone. So typically if somebody feels like something's going wrong, we will go in and have a look, and then we'll kind of connect them to services that can help them if they feel like it's something they can't coexist with anymore. Right. We personally, though, don't sort of do clearing or people will sort of talk about demonology and those types of things. We're not into that sort of category.
Right. One last question before we'll let you go. Do you find that I guess like Australians or the citizens or, just even other countries that you've been to, are they a little bit more open towards the paranormal? Like, I know North America, like we are becoming more open, and we talked about this a little bit at the beginning of the show, but we still get a lot of, I guess, people associating paranormal again, with the demonology part of it, or or just literally sometimes crazy people that see ghosts and everything, right? Or whatever it is. But do you find that with the history of Australia, are people a little bit more open? Because you mentioned people, I guess it's like living with the dead, like they're more open to it, right? Whereas here, the minute a dust ball flies across something, we've got people calling us and I swear it had red eyes and blah, freaking out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, are people a little calmer, do you think? I mean, I suppose you don't know because you haven't been, to Canada or the US or, or investigated here as far as I know, but you know what I'm getting at? Like, do you find
I think we're still really conservative in Australia as well. So I obviously have a professional career outside of my paranormal interest, and I probably wouldn't go into my office and share with everybody that I'd gone on a paranormal investigation that weekend, as an example. So no, I think I think we are still really conservative, and I think if you tell people, oh, look, I've gone out for a paranormal investigation, a good chunk of them will kind of look at you like you are a bit of a kook. So we have the same thing here, and it's certainly getting a lot better though. It's heaps better than it was even 5 years ago. It's much better, but I'm really looking forward to sort of seeing it get taken more seriously as a science, which I think is really where I really want to see it going. And then I hope, it can actually be this really interesting kind of topic that people explore and they start to understand more and they get closer to and they understand some of the reasons and how to debunk and all of these types of things. But definitely right now, Cathryn, I think we face the same challenge as you in that regard here.
Okay. I wasn't sure because I thought, I wonder if it's different. I wonder if it's a little open-minded or, a little bit more calm, I guess is the best way to stay. I just want to thank you so much for coming on the show, Charmaine. It was such a pleasure to meet you.
Oh, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It's really wonderful.
Great. Tell your husband thank you for sharing you with us tonight. So
yeah.
Well, thank you.
Guys, remember to check her out on Australian Paranormal and I guess watch for Still Moon Wine as well.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. It was such a pleasure. We hope to see you again. Take care, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for watching.